Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. It's time for one of those Ketchups again. And we inevitably now, but seeing as you've become such an internet sensation, Craig, he's cowering behind the seat here. We're going to start in Craig's corner. This is a seat out of a 1967 Lamborghini 400 GT that we've got here. And the owner we've done an engine rebuild on the car, and the owner has mentioned that the driver's seat is less than perfect.
Yeah.
That's putting it a bit mildly, isn't it, really?
No.
This is...
Yeah, the back's collapsed, doesn't it?
He actually said you could feel something hard against his back, the
Yeah.
metal frame or something. When
Yeah, most probably.
And that is actually a safety issue, because if somebody runs into the back of the car, obviously, heaven forbid, they could actually give him a spinal injury with that, the way it is. So
yeah, that's going to have to come off. And
it is.
Yeah,
yes.
so it just comes off like a sort of glove, really, and it's drilled.
But we've got a further layer of complication with this one, because this is factory pigskin leather. And the pigskin is completely different to the hide. I've been looking into this, speaking to various people, Steve at Leather Care, Jonathan Connolly, probably one of the world's leading experts on automotive leather. And apparently, pigskin, it was fitted to very, very few Lamborghinis when they were new. I suspect they charged through the nose for it, actually. Frank Sinatra, he owned a Miura, and that had a pigskin interior. And I know of another car that I was involved with many, many years ago, which was another Miura S, which had a pigskin interior. Pigskin is an interesting material. It's thinner than cowhide, and apparently with cowhide you can grab hold of a piece and pull it,
stretch it,
any way you want. But this is grained, so it's like wood.
Yes.
So in other words, you can...
the stretch is
you can stretch
reduced.
One direction, but if you stretch it the other, it actually tears. So you've got to be... and it's got these tiny, tiny, tiny pock marks in it, which were the follicles on on your favourite hog roast, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, the great Craig Aloney can do anything.
So so we're going to have to try and find someone to
it's
replicate
actually gone
that.
through there.
Yeah,
but it's very thin, very, very.
Whereas normally we would have just matched up as good as and then got Steve to sort of blow it in, really.
Yes. But that ain't going to cut it.
No, it isn't. No. So we need to get that reproduced.
That's another challenge.
I know.
you will.
But it does need doing. It's one of those where it's. I know we don't like to say, we've got to replace parts, but we've got to replace parts. Yeah.
Well, even if it's just
the
horseshoe, as it's called.
It's just going to. Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, this looks pretty. It doesn't look very nice.
No.
That's gone as well.
Yeah.
I know you say somebody's had a go at it.
Yeah.
But they haven't actually dressed it properly.
No, I know. It does need. It'll look completely different as well once it's beefed up, to its normal. To its normal shape, and that's just gone, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah, but also it's quite. I'll have to give it a feed before I start taking it off as well, because it's not awful, but
it's very soft, isn't it?
Yeah.
Considering how old
it
is.
Yeah.
It is soft.
But you still don't want it to, as you're taking it off.
Oh no, to tear.
Yes, yeah.
No, that would be
a
nightmare. And you've been on with some other stuff as well for the old Aston Martin DB2.
Yes, I've just started to cut out the leather. Well, it's this is the so that's the original dash with the original leather on, and as you can see, there's nothing underneath that. It's just straight over that. But
so that would just be glued onto the aluminium in that
well,
case.
yeah, but glued around, so the top is floating, as you can see. Right. So, because if it was glued on the face there, you'd see it would catch everything. But if it's like that, it sort of misses it. So it's like that. Right. Really. So these are pieces that are they're not offcuts, but they're the smaller parts from when we're trying to do the big bits. So, because we don't want to throw anything away, so they're still good bits, and that you can also get a good stretch to them. Yes,
Right.
yeah.
So that's the art
we're
of-
making the most of the
Precisely.
hide. Yes,
But that's what everybody.
Yeah,
that's
well, yeah,
how-
yes,
as
yeah,
it,
yeah,
only
yeah.
as it should be. But this, have you ever wondered what a 1950s Aston Martin dashboard looked like?
Yeah.
You know now. I mean, they were. It was all hand.
Yes.
Hand built.
As you can see that though, that looks like that has been
Been
glued.
glued. It does,
but
doesn't
but
it?
those
Yes.
haven't. Just to
Well,
throw you.
Maybe
on your toes
maybe
there.
Mrs. Shaw, who did this in 1958,
Yes, yeah.
was having an off day. You never know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is the original leather from
Yes.
the 1950s.
And it's got this little.
That's
Yeah.
crash padding.
Yeah. Just
This is
just
this is
in case.
passive safety 1950s style. There you go. So when you run into a brick wall,
Yes.
your life will be saved by a piece of half-inch thick rubber. Wow, I mean, it's extraordinary. But that's hand-built cars.
I
mean,
know. So soon as that's on it, it'll look great.
Yeah, of course
that's
it will.
the
Yes. Yeah. But they're all the same. I mean, Lamborghini Miuras. So many cars I mean, the Aston Martin DB4, 5s and 6s, the dashboard on those, you got that beautiful instrument binnacle,
Yeah.
which is painted like a graphite grey
Yes,
satin.
yeah.
But the dash was originally vinyl.
Yeah. You've got that top piece, haven't you, where there's stitching.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that
yeah.
was all vinyl from the factory.
I know.
People trim them in leather now.
Yeah.
And there's been many an argument I've heard from Aston Martin specialists up and down the country who've said, we would never do it like that, and I would do it like that, and I wouldn't do it like that, and I'd maybe do it like that.
Yeah.
Nobody has, because they're going away from original, nobody
know.
has got the definitive.
No.
They think they have. But anyway, we won't go there.
Yep.
So, Craig, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you
Yeah.
anon.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we'll chart the progress of
Okay,
the
yes,
400 GT seat. Well, we have young James here making his world media premiere on a video. Yeah. James,
Yes.
welcome to being, I know this, you've been here a while now, but it's good to have you on the team.
Thank you.
And you're doing your studying here in conjunction with the Heritage Skills Academy.
Yes, I am.
And that's going very well.
It is so far. I've not been there too many times, but it's going well and quite enjoying it as well.
Good. You're enjoying it as well?
Yeah, it's quite nice down there,
See
surprisingly.
about that. Okay, so you've built up this is the Don Draper Cadillac that we did a video on a few weeks ago. This is the Cadillac that was featured in Mad Men. It was Don Draper's personal transport, the fictional character. But before it goes to the US, it was sold at Hampson Auctions to a US buyer. Before it goes over there, he's actually asked us to do as much as we can to it. Yeah. We've been looking at the front brakes, and what have you done to it, basically?
Well, Corey and I have stripped down front and rear.
You're right.
When we stripped down the front, we realised the shoes were cracked, which is a massive no-go for something like this.
Yeah.
But apart from that, the fronts have been all right. You know, all the springs have been all right, and yeah, just a nice rebuild. With the rears, we found that one of the cylinders was actually split on the inside. So as soon as you pulled this rubber back, we got brake fluid pouring out everywhere.
Right.
So we've done that, and we're just making new brake lines as well for that.
This is a very interesting piece of brake design, really. You've got this whopping great cast iron brake drum here, which was what cars had up until the very late 1950s. This is a single leading shoe brake. So what that means is when the wheel is rotating this way, as it would be when the car's going forward, this shoe here, as the piston pushes, this shoe actually has a tendency to be pulled into the brake drum because the brake drum is spinning and trying to pick this up and pull it. And that's called a leading shoe. Yeah. And this one here has the opposite happening. So what happens here is, with the drum going this way, because the pressure's applied from this end, the shoe is constantly trying to be pushed away from the brake drum, not into it, and that becomes the trailing shoe. So leading shoe, trailing shoe. A lot of cars had one wheel cylinder up top there, and then another one down here, and because they were both tending to wrap, as it's called, into the brake drum, easy for me to say, you had what were called twin leading shoe brakes. But because of this design, what twin leading shoe brakes can tend to do is be a bit snatchy at very low speeds, because they're constantly trying to get into the drum. So Cadillac, for that reason, made one leading and one trailing, and that's why they came up with power brakes, a brake servo, because this one sort of pulls itself into the drum, and you don't have to apply much pedal pressure for that to happen.
It pulls itself in, doesn't it?
Exactly, but this one doesn't. So that's why you have to have the brake servo to increase the pedal pressure. But I mean, the reason why drums really fundamentally don't work, the big thing about discs over drums is, obviously this gets hot. If you're driving down a mountain pass or something with a load of luggage, playing tourists in a mountain range or something, everything gets hot, particularly the brake drums, and for several reasons they're not ideal compared to the disc. One is heat expands it, so you end up with the shoes having to come out further, which means you've got a bit more pedal travel, which is not great. Secondly, because this gets warm, everything in here gets warm, including the fluid and seals in there. And that means that the brake fluid boiling point is so much more accessible with a drum brake system than it is with a disc brake system, where everything's external and in the airflow.
Yep.
So that's fundamentally why brake discs overtook brake drums. But it's an interesting insight into brake drum technology, and they came up with the self-adjuster, as it's called, because in the very old days, brake drums had an adjuster on each side, which you adjusted to take the shoes up a certain amount of clearance on the drum. And then you sort of wound the adjuster in till the shoes were hard up against the drum, and then you wound it back 2 or 3 clicks to give you a running clearance. Yeah. And if that wasn't right, left to right on the car, it would pull one way or the other. You'd almost snatch the steering wheel out of your hands, you know? Yeah. And again, that's so this has a self-adjuster. It's a ratchet mechanism, and as the shoes wear, you get more of a clearance between the shoes and the drum, and it clicks, it carries on, it slowly clicks its way around, click by click. It's a fiendishly clever system, really. Yeah. Different manufacturers have used different ways of doing it. Ford's in the 1970s and 80s had a rod across here with a sort of 2 serrated wheels that ratcheted like that to take up the clearance. But you've done a great job there, James. It looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Once we get them raised built up, we can bleed the whole system in.
Exactly. So yeah, good stuff. And we've got a new flexi hose on here as well.
We haven't changed them.
Oh really?
Yes, they were all right. Most of the car underneath is amazing for its age, to be honest.
Right. Well, I did notice a bill for some brake work in the history file. Somebody's done that fairly recently. So we are bringing them up to tip-top condition. Yeah. So well done. Final touch.
Cheers, thank you very much.
Well, the Mondeo restoration has to get an honourable mention because things are moving on at a very fast pace. This has gone from an extremely bare body shell to well on its way to being put back together, frankly. Tom and young James have been putting the headlining in, all the wiring loom is in, a lot of the glass is in, including a new windscreen. A lot of the underbonnet infrastructure is put in place. Some of it new, some of it new old stock, some of it restored, etc. It's not, even for a 20-year-old car, it's not easy to get some of the parts for it at all, actually. But it is looking wonderful, this car. If we go to the interior, a lot of the wiring loom, as I say, is back in. The floor is built up. The headlining, as I mentioned, all this, the seat belts, the drop glasses in the doors, and of course the doors have to close perfectly, which they do. Obviously we've got a little bit of weight left to go in, which is the door card on the inside, but nevertheless that's exactly how they should be. Well, here we have the engine stripped down. We've overhauled the heads, and it's a lovely piece of industrial design, this valve gear actually. Ford have made some fairly interesting, in not a good way, engines over the years. The late 60s, early 70s, the Pinto engine used to eat camshafts in its early years because it didn't get enough oil. The push rod engines, the cross flow engines in the 60s. Yeah, but this is a very, very nice unit and used in the Jaguar cars as well, of course. But there's lots of lovely little details about this. The timing chains are Hivo chains, particular type of chain. We got these in particular. This is quite worn actually. Now we've got it apart. This is the timing chain guide, and these can become brittle with age and heat, etc. So I'm very happy that we've actually made the decision to take this apart. Yeah, it was the right thing to do in hindsight. Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe, and we'll be back with something else very soon.